Good day, everyone. This is Launch Your Career, our Microsoft Reactor series where we're exploring different job roles around Microsoft and around the world. And today is one of my favorite job roles that I've really enjoyed learning really in the last 5 or 6 years, which is data scientist. And I am joined by two data scientists. Welcome, Nate, and welcome, Alena. All right, I think you all are on mute. If you want to unmute yourself there in our stream platform. And so, Nate and Alena, I'll have them introduce themselves in a second. Just a reminder, y'all out there, this is our Microsoft Reactor event. We do have a code of conduct. So more than anything, be polite, be respectful, but most importantly, share your voice. Ask questions in our chat window here, and Nate, Alena, and I will try to get to that throughout today's live stream. So with that, let's go back. Welcome, Nate. Welcome, Alena. Good to see you.
Hey, everyone. Excited to be here. Excited to talk data science and answer any questions you may have.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Alena, and I'm really excited to our talk.
Awesome. Well, let's begin with a little bit of an icebreaker. I always try to do this on this stream and such, but let me just begin by asking you, what inspired you to become data scientist? Like, was there a magic moment or something that really made you really want to become a data scientist?
I've been thinking about this recently, and it's really interesting. When I was a really little kid, I liked collecting Pokemon and basketball cards, and not just collecting those cards, but also organizing them. And and then there was this constant theme in my life of being really interested in patterns. I was finding trends among data, and collecting data, and really getting insights from data, from organizing my Pokemon cards as a kid to researching my family tree, and this idea of putting pieces together and collecting data and getting insights from it, or just organizing data itself. All of that really came together when I went to college in Atlanta, Georgia. Was really interested in statistics and really had a good time in my math classes in high school, and then started off as a computer science major, but then shifted towards data science, which was this new upcoming thing, and then really fell in love with coding in Python and building. And then, of course, as this started to really become really popular as a course topic, realizing that was really my niche.
Yeah, very cool. What about you, Alena?
Yeah, I think I have like a kind of similar story as Nate. Back when I was in college, I was trying to figure out what I'm interested in, and I was switching majors. I started as a chemical engineer, then I was studying theoretical math, and I was taking like real analysis, abstract algebra courses. They were like really heavy theoretical math classes. And then when I was a junior year, I took a regression analysis course, and I kind of saw how all this theoretical math could be applied to real world problems. And I got so fascinated, like all the knowledge which I acquired before, it was just like going into place. So we were doing a project, like a course project, and everyone could build their own data set and try to make a prediction model. So I decided to predict the IMDb rating of movies, and I spent just 3 days like building this data set, exploring, trying to find like open source data, and I was so fascinated. And after that, I decided that I think like I can do that every day. And since that, I started to dive more into that topic. I started to take statistics classes. I started to do research in NLP, and that's how it started.
Yeah, very cool. No, it's very fascinating to hear like what is the moment that inspires one in career. In previous episodes, I've talked about some video games that were inspirational with me, but like Nate, you brought up the cards, Pokemon cards, and things for me. My geeky moment of my youth was I was really into Magic: The Gathering. It's also a card game. I think it predated Pokemon, or it was approximately a similar time. But I did something similar. Like I would sort and categorize the cards by their by their color or by the offensive, defensive. I'd create these different decks, and different decks would have different strategies and stuff like that. And I realized that some of the thinking that I did as a kid and that were the precursors to what has become in data and data transformation and manipulation and later data science and things like that. Actually started in Microsoft as a marketing analytics manager. This was before I think the title data scientist was known, or certainly known to me. But I've been around things with data, but I've been just really fascinated by this transformation in modern data science when we think about building models and Python and all the libraries and TensorFlow and PyTorch and some of these deep learning frameworks and things like that. It's just really just incredible things that have emerged here and such. So let's take a profile before we get into some of the good discussion. A little bit of looking at a data scientist at a glance. So what have I been doing in these last, 3 episodes? I've been consulting ChatGPT for what does ChatGPT think a data scientist does? And I don't know, this is the definition that it came up with. Some interesting sources there, computerscience.org and a college in Wisconsin and things like that, University of Wisconsin and such. But it says like a data scientist's job is to analyze data for actionable insights, clean, organize, sort, and analyze data to unlock patterns and trends. I don't know. What do you think, Nate and Alena? Does that summarize it pretty well? Is ChatGPT right, or there's some different things there?
Yeah, I think this summarizes pretty well. But I think as a data scientist, you can actually your role varies. I would say from company to company, from project to project, and depending on your role, you can do many different things, including ML engineering and even software engineering sometimes. But I think overall, this summarizes pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think what's really interesting is the line that says, help businesses make better strategic decisions. Because oftentimes, and there's an emphasis on helping business stakeholders, the people who might not have such a strong data science background, helping them figure out how to make the business better. And that's something that in many undergraduate and even graduate courses that isn't stressed enough, I think, because we love learning about the latest models. We love applying complex statistical techniques to generate insights. There's this whole element that I want to stress to everyone here on really making it business accessible and making sure that you're both answering the business problem and also telling the people you're working with on the business side, making sure that they can understand all the great work and great analysis that you've done, because it's one thing to build an analysis, but unfortunately it might not go as far if you can't explain it well. So that emphasis on helping the business make better decisions is really important, not just the mathematical and statistical and computer science side of things.
Yeah, I really like that because I think it focuses on there's a communication dimension to data science and maybe that's not fully represented in the ChatGPT version here, right? It focuses on the functions or the how, but there's kind of a special sauce or an unlock that in data science, being able to have these insights, but then being able to communicate those to business audiences. And indeed, I think that's what both of you do here at Microsoft is help us better understand our customers and help us better understand some of what our products are doing from a data perspective. I find that amazing. And it also kind of demystifies the notion that not every data scientist is building the next ChatGPT or large language model. In fact, most data scientists are doing a whole range of things that are based on the needs of the business, right? Cool. Well, keeping going here. So some other things that I think if you're an aspiring data scientist, you can look at. Of course, my other sources I've looked at is LinkedIn. The Career Explorer is pretty awesome. There's a data scientist track associate that focuses on Microsoft Azure that y'all can check out. You're not going to be super surprised to know that there's, 117,000 jobs in data scientists in the United States alone in the last 30 days, right? So This is probably the most popular job role I've seen of all the different ones that we've explored yet. Just the overall demand for data focused talent, not only as a data scientist, but think about data analyst, or think about machine learning engineer, which we're going to cover next week in our episode of launch your career and things like that. But there's just so many things here that you can really explore and such. So. All right, let's keep going. So first question, Nate and Alena, to you is, let's just start to, I think, unpack, like, what is a day in the life of a data scientist? Like, what's your Wednesday look like?
Nate, you can go first. I'll continue.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think every workday is some combination of meetings, coding, kind of more business focused work, such as PowerPoint presentations to, as I was saying earlier, communicate what you've worked on, as well as kind of deep thinking work, which I guess that deep thinking part can underline everything during meetings, although typically not as much during meetings when you're, talking with others, at least for me. But then, coding and PowerPoint really. And when I say coding, I'm also going to include trying to find the right data. So you think of the data science process, right? You need to understand what kind of analysis that you need to run, which starts, and I want to stress to everyone here, because you'll be much better off this way, focusing on the business problem first, not just rushing to build a model with whatever data you have, but rushing or really understanding what the business is what wants to do. And so on a typical Wednesday, if we're at the beginning of a project or even middle or end, really staying in tune with what the business wants is important. So oftentimes that's the actual meetings with the stakeholders. For example, right now I'm working with a marketing team to understand, what kind of recommendation system they want me to build. So that's important. And then, of course, part of my day is coding and actually building that. And then, depending on the day, I'm also presenting or building PowerPoint slides to be able to present that to the right people. So I would say at Microsoft, there's a really good, at least in my role on this data science team, it's a good combination of, telling people what you're working on it, and then, making sure that we understand that we're doing the right thing.
Yeah, I generally agree with Nate. So I would like to add like some of my perspective that again is during my experience. So what I noticed is that when I was an intern, I was interning at Microsoft before I joined as a full timer, and I was also interning at Amazon. And when I was an intern, like a very junior role, I would say I was doing more coding, and like I would say that my day would consist like 80% of the coding, and then like only 20% of communication. But as I'm progressing in my career, I would say communication is taking more and more time now, because now, like, if before, like, my manager would decompose the business problem for me, now it's more of my job to actually like talk to business stakeholders and to understand how to decompose this open-ended business problem into a mathematical solution.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and I think it gets to one of the first themes, is that the data scientist role is technical, right? Both of you are actively coding. You're using Python. Are there other languages or other frameworks or libraries that you find that you use quite often and such?
I would say, of course, you are using some SQL or like data query language just to collect your data. We are using some our internal Microsoft query languages, which are similar to SQL. And I'm also using PySpark, which is for bigger data sets because it uses distributed systems. Under So underlying logic is based on the distributed systems, which makes data processing more efficient. So when you're using like really big sets of data, distributed systems can really help to save time.
Yeah, absolutely. I noticed that Fuel Snable from our Twitch platform mentioned Spark just as you were saying it too. That there's other distributed systems and ways to make large scale data work. What about this is something that I've heard, and I'm not a data scientist myself. I've taught some introduction to data science and introduction to machine learning in various forums, knowing enough to be dangerous to teach it, but perhaps not the day to day like you all and such. But one of the common things I hear is that a data scientist spends 80 to 90% of their time cleaning data, transforming it, manipulating it, basically preparing it for use. I guess. Is that true, or tell us a little bit more about kind of the data preparation elements and such?
Yeah, I can take that one. It's often true. Of course, it's things change based off of what cycle you're on and in a specific project. But oftentimes, it's not. We all know that, or hopefully know now that in order to run an analysis, you need data, and not just any data. You need the best available. Oftentimes, the availability there is important, because sometimes it might not be ideal, but you go for best available.
Yeah.
And then there's right now I'm working with a really, really big database, and there are thousands of tables, but understanding and deducing how to pull the right data for my use case is important. And there are different teams who know things better than you do in that space. So oftentimes it's getting the right queries. First of all, I use a lot of SQL to get the right data, and then it's combining all of these different SQL queries into the desired output. And then, of course, once you have your data, it might not be clean, or it might not be suitable for your analysis, and then you have to keep tweaking it. So definitely don't, just in general, just a quick tip, don't rush into the analysis at the expense of making sure that at the expense of having the right data and the right transform data for your analysis, for example. So it does take up a lot of time. I don't know, 70 to 90%. I don't know exactly, but and it often changes, right? You can spend a month, 2 months focused on that, getting that right data, and then spend the next few months working on a model largely with that data intact. So it obviously depends. But I would say don't be afraid. In fact, lean in to that stage of the data science process, because you're going to get your hands dirty with this data. You're going to have to really understand, hey, what is that primary key of the data? What granularity, what grain is my data at? Is it at this, if we deal with customers, what is that unique customer identifier? Should we roll it up to a higher, like a group of customers, and build a model on that, in being able to kind of navigate both grains of your data, right? So getting to know your data is a key part of being a data scientist.
Yeah, yeah. And indeed, I mean, it sounds like that there's a communication point of that too. Like you both made the point around communication is important, and as you've progressed in your careers, that communication becomes more and more important. I suspect that knowing your data, knowing the domain, knowing the context behind it, it's part of communication, right? Because you've got to talk to people who know the data or things like that as well. What about bias? I think bias in data is a very common and popular topic right now. Understanding, the responsible use of data. We're training models in some cases that produce AI systems that can have underlying bias in the data and things like that. What are some of the things that you do to kind of overcome bias in the data? How do you evaluate it? How do you think about that within this data transformation and preparation phase and such?
I'm working with customer data as my day-to-day life, and I think it's important to understand like what assumptions you're making before you're going to actually like building a model. I think like explore the data analysis and understanding like assumptions, which are simplifying your model. It's very important. I don't know if Nate, you have like any examples, like specific examples of that?
So first of all, here at Microsoft, we really care about what we call responsible AI, which is really this, I would call a movement to mitigate bias and make sure that our models are fair and transparent. And I'm really passionate about this idea of model explainability. You know, especially because I'm sure there are a lot of students here, and or at the very least aspiring data scientists who are learning these methods like neural networks and, you know, deep learning, and especially as it relates to large language models like ChatGPT, right? There are these models that are very complex and can do great things. However, you know, when I'm building a model, and I'm not doing much deep learning, really not doing any deep learning, my models are more classical supervised machine learning, where you know, you have labels and you're trying to predict certain things. You know, I really focus on model explainability and making sure that when I'm building those PowerPoints, the PowerPoints usually aren't too complicated, at least on the model side of things, because when I'm building a model, I want to see basically how simple can I make my model. For example, linear regression, or, you know, decision trees, if anyone's familiar with those. Can I use those techniques versus even something like XGBoost, like a more complicated, you know, version of a decision tree model? Can I, you know, just to make sure that my models are explainable, because that relates to bias, and making sure that, hey, we know exactly how our variables, how our input data is being used to make those predictions. And therefore, it's easier for me to explain, it's easier for the stakeholders to get on board, and it's easier to make sure that we're not, you know, incorporating, you know, any extra bias.
Yeah, makes sense. And you start to introduce some terminology in there. You kind of ventured into the realm of machine learning, and you talked about supervised learning and other models and things like that. This might be a good moment to also demystify some terminology here. So, like, you know, what do you think the difference is between machine learning and data science? And I'll throw a third one in there: artificial intelligence. Like, do you have definitions for this, or how do you think about it?
I would say data science. It's like a general name for all of the things we mentioned. Um, I would say data science includes machine learning, and machine learning it's more like of tools which data scientists are using in their day-to-day life. There is a difference, I would say, between data science and machine learning engineering, because like data scientists, we are building models, we are testing the hypothesis, we trying to like uh, build the mathematical foundation for this model, uh, and test it uh, kind of locally, like in
Mhm.
our Jupyter notebooks, or I'm using Databricks for my distributed systems computing. But machine learning engineers, they're really like productionizing these models. And that machine learning engineering, I would say it includes more of software engineering skills.
Mhm.
And data scientists, they're using more analytical skills. Uh, and artificial intelligence, I would say it's more of as I see it, I think these definitions are a little blurred. But artificial intelligence, it's more of a research-oriented branch, and like ChatGPT is definitely an artificial intelligence uh, model. Uh, Data scientists and machine learning engineers can use that as a tool, but
Mhm.
we're not developing that. And but research scientists and research scientists, they do develop artificial intelligence models.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and thanks for sharing that, because I think it touches to a little bit of just the range of different job roles that are available in this field. In this show, we've explored a data analyst, we've explored a data scientist now on this episode. I think next week we have machine learning engineer, and I've got a data engineer coming as well. But you also mentioned kind of research scientist, and there's a theoretical and a very you know, a very applied elements of the science and the mathematics part of this too. And so, such a large range for people to explore on it. You know, speaking of that, we've got a cloud skills challenge here that you can explore these different job roles. And so, if you're not really sure, like, do I aspire to become a data scientist or a data engineer, or the person who makes the next chat GPT or large language models, we've got resources for you on Microsoft Learn to really explore that. So encourage you to check that out, where you can collect all of them or just focus on the ones that you're interested in as well. But really, this is such a wide range of different areas of career exploration. And there's nothing to say that you can't be one and then not be another later. You know, I think this is just part of the exploration process, is to decide what areas you want to focus on the most and things like that. All right, well, let's go to kind of a different topic, and I will say for all of you out, thank you all for asking questions in the chat window. I've taken a look at that. We're going to cover a little bit of the skills building here in just a minute, but let me lead in. I think first with data science has been there's a lot of hype here, right? It's been a very popular job role, and both of you have kind of began and continued your careers through this hype cycle, and so. My question to you is, like, where has data science, I think, lived up to humanity's expectations? And where does it kind of fall short? What are some things that we're still working on in the data science community?
I guess that last part, I mean, explainability, I mean, going back to kind of what I was saying earlier, building the theme here is, when we're using ChatGPT, for example, and to be clear, as we kind of said earlier, neither of us are building ChatGPT or really anything like it. Our day-to-day is way more like, solving direct business problems on a smaller scale than building any large language model that, is changing the world like ChatGPT. But with that being said, explainability is really important. And I think as it relates to, talking about humanity right now, and I know a lot of us are thinking about those large language models, I would say that, I've been thinking a lot about, okay, well, when that large language model is making those predictions to give you the next response in ChatGPT, we would all like to know kind of like how that was given. And so I think that's certainly something that's going to be a focus going forward. The first part of that question is, how it's lived up. I mean, we're able as data scientists to really help a lot of people and get a lot of people excited within our company. The different stakeholders, the various business people you're working with, and even the other data scientists when you show them a new tool or a new technique you're using, right? We're in a very, exciting field, both within our own companies and of course within the world. And I would say if you really want to do work that really makes a difference, especially at Microsoft, we're really able to help a lot of business stakeholders get the insights that they need and really help them solve their business problems in a way that people without these skills can't really do. So it's always really exciting to hear people that, I might have just recently met, virtually on a recent Teams call, who, maybe they're running these marketing campaigns and I'm going to go help them figure out how to understand how effective they are, or, build a model to predict who they should show those campaigns to. That gets people excited, and that's always fun.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think, Alena?
Yeah, of course I agree. And I see how data science progressed over the last, I would say I started to do that like 7 years ago, maybe back in college. And when I was doing my internships back in college, I saw that many companies, like I was working for smaller companies, of course, and many companies, they didn't have like a proper data pipelines to collect data. And you can't really like do much with not a good quality data. But now I think most of the companies and people realize the importance of data collection. And as we have now more data and more tools, I think we're able to derive way more insights for business.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the tools have become so sophisticated. It's amazing. I did make an attempt a few years ago to even understand some of the math, the more advanced maths and deep learning and neural networks, and it's overwhelming what data science tools and techniques that data scientists have at their disposal. It's incredible. And I'll also tease out, I think, something that I heard both of you say is that, there's a certain amount of joy in this career in being able to express an insight or unlock a mystery. It's like solving a problem, a riddle, and then finding out and having people in the business or otherwise express appreciation for the value that you bring. Oh my gosh, I didn't know this about my customers, and now I'm gonna change my behavior. I'm gonna change what I do as a result of what you've recommended. It sounds like there's, can be a lot of joy and self-actualization, I think, that comes from a career, in that. So the dark side, we're talking about what are things that the data scientist, I think, still has to progress. I'll kind of symbolize in this question here. Gurbinder asked, since we have auto ML in place, is there a need for learning hard skills? And I'll paraphrase and let me also kind of join to this. Is like, this is where ChatGPT comes in. And so how are tools like auto ML or ChatGPT or some of these, how are these changing the way you do your jobs every day?
Yeah, I think definitely these tools are really helpful in terms of they can actually facilitate your job. They can help you to code faster. They can help you to create the model faster.
Mhm.
But I think still like the part where you are translating the business problem, like open-ended business problem, into a mathematical solution, that still requires like a lot of theoretical knowledge, and that still requires being able to see like patterns in data. So that part, to be able to do that part, I think you still need to learn and have like theoretical knowledge and
Mhm.
uh, hard skills. I think while you're learning, you're acquiring these hard skills.
Mhm.
Yeah, here's what I'd say, because obviously this is a big topic these days. What do I need to learn if we have ChatGPT, like those kind of questions, and that's
Mhm.
very broader societal, future of education type
Yeah,
of
for
question,
sure.
and very philosophical. But I think from a data science perspective, if I'm going to predict the next 5, 10 years, I would say right now, still learn the hard skills. With that being said, understands that as data scientists or data analysts or machine learning engineers, anywhere, in this field, broader field, you're going to be using tools like ChatGPT to make your life a lot easier, which is really exciting. It's like having a partner to do your work. But once again, you're the agent. You're the person delivering the results. You're the one responsible. And so whether that's writing some code and then having ChatGPT figure out if that was the correct approach at a high level, figuring out how to write code more efficiently. We talk a lot about speed of your code. We talked about kind of PySpark, and if you're comparing, PySpark data frames to Pandas data frames, right? Like having a quick way to convert Pandas code to PySpark code, that's been really useful for me as
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
realizing I'll run code and say, hey, and realize, hey, my environment crashed because like my data is too big for my Pandas data frame and whatever transformations I'm trying to do. Being able to
yeah.
copy and paste that into our internal version of ChatGPT and say, hey, can please convert this to
Yeah,
PySpark,
you have to
and
ask
then
nicely, or ChatGPT won't give you the right
right,
answer,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, there's a correlation between more bugs in your code that that it gives you and your politeness. Now, I don't know if we've run that analysis, but yeah, absolutely. Like those kind of, I don't want to call them mundane tasks, but tasks that you would otherwise be spending more time working on. Um, whether it's little things or more broader, like, hey, this is a very vague business problem. What are different data science techniques to go and tackle those? And then of course there's an oftentimes with my stakeholders it's been iterative where we're I'm saying, hey, what about this approach, especially if I have a more technical stakeholder who can kind of talk about these things with us, saying, hey, we have this approach idea, is this are you on board with us doing it this way to solve your business problem? And some of
Yeah.
them are less technical, but overall ChatGPT is like having a really good assistant to make our lives easier. But I would say I can't imagine only relying on something like ChatGPT without having those hard skills, to tie it back to the original question. So I would say for now, for the next few years, I think everyone should still be learning the same things that we learned a few years ago.
Yeah, hard skills matter. Learning Python, learning the libraries, learning how to use your pandas and data frame and know the limitations, and that I agree, and that makes a lot of sense for somebody who's emerging in career and such as well. Gosh, I would also just add to this list GitHub Copilot and code spaces and some of the work with being able to use AI assistants to be able to complete code. Both of you write code in Python and in other languages and that. Have you experimented with Copilot? Does it help make your life a little bit easier, or do you suspect it will in the future?
I personally didn't use Copilot yet, but I did use ChatGPT to help me
Mm-hmm.
convert the code. So we were doing some infrastructural changes, and we needed to convert some of our queries from one language to another. And
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think ChatGPT was really helpful. And as Nate mentioned, he did like kind of similar thing with pandas to PySpark.
yeah,
So I think that uh, really helped me to do that way faster because I didn't know the exact syntaxes of the language
hmm,
at the moment. But then, like when I was doing that with the help of ChatGPT, it really helped me to pick up that language structure faster than if I would be doing that manually.
I want to compare this to, I just thought of this because I just realized as we're talking about this, I haven't used Stack Overflow as much as I used to. And if anyone's
yeah,
familiar with Stack Overflow, right,
Q&A.
like the question and answer forum for code, more or less, and other things, but largely, as data scientists, that whole pandas to PySpark conversion, that those would, because it's been a few years since I, was taking courses on PySpark in grad school. I'm not as refreshed with the syntax of PySpark, and so those would be a few minutes of previously that my workflow would entail a few minutes of Stack Overflow questions of pandas to PySpark or how to do something in PySpark. Now that's been reduced to a minute of ChatGPT usage.
Yeah,
But then again, the original question: do you still need to know those hard skills? I would say yes, because
yeah,
you need to feel comfortable. At the end of the day, you still need to know how every line of your code works.
yeah.
You'll be much better off that way. And that, whether that's Stack Overflow or ChatGPT, it's the same idea.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, to some degree, the value proposition of a co-pilot is particularly valuable for data scientists because if you can know how to convert code or utilize an assistive AI to do so, it allows you to spend more time on that communication side, on that data, domain knowledge, all of that stuff we talked about earlier. Because if you have high quality data in, you get high quality insight out, and so it seems like kind of a win-win in the data science world and such. Well, let's shift directions. There's lots of questions in the chat just around skills building and what skills do I need to be successful in the next 5 years. I'll just begin with Amanda's question here, which I'll kind of paraphrase. What do you think will help you stand out in the competitive labor market? How do you come out with business value when you do your projects and such?
I have an answer for the second one.
Mhm.
So I would say back when I was interning at Amazon, we had this principle like working backwards, and I think it's transferable to many projects like data science projects, software engineer projects. So when you start doing something, I would say you're not like coming with business value for your project, but you're rather working backwards. So you have some business problem and the end result that your business stakeholders want to see, and then going backwards, you are trying to like figure out tools and algorithms and uh, infrastructure, the project design, everything. Uh, Based on the end goal that you have.
Mhm.
And I think that really helps to structure your project and thoughts and approach well.
Yeah, and I'll take the first part of that question, or the first question there. I think the technical skills are kind of a foundation. So you're gonna in the labor market, like a lot of people know a lot of different technical skills, and the most important ones. I think in the question, in some of the questions here, what languages do I need to learn, et cetera. Python and SQL, I would say, are really musts in the data science world. there are questions on Python versus R. I'm a big Python fan, but I think just understanding how to manipulate data with code is really important. So assuming that essentially everyone applying has those skills, then it becomes more of like the communication component and the ability to translate data science problems to business problems. And once again, it's really fascinating because now, at least for problems that have largely been done before, right? ChatGPT is really helpful as kind of your assistant there. But when you're applying, and actually that just made me think, in the future, it's going to be, but now and the future, your ability to use ChatGPT and other AI assistants and co-pilots, as we call them here, that's probably going to be a skill that is, sets you apart, right? Like I'm just theorizing here because this is so new, like who is the best at, generating prompts to assist you, right? Going back to Stack Overflow, I would say that's a relatively necessary skill as a data scientist, is being able to find the answers you need online. This kind of takes it to another level. But going back, communication and really showing that you can take your output, and this is where I think ChatGPT might be less helpful relatively, is, how do you turn your insights into effective PowerPoint slides? How can you you have to understand your stakeholders, and you have to understand the language that they speak in, whether they're technical or less technical, or how well they know the data or even the business problem that you're working on. Showing that you can do that when you're applying, and whether that's talking about your previous experience or even just bringing that up as a topic in your interviews, I think will set you apart.
Yeah, and I want to touch on that communication part, because I think it is so important, and it's a key theme that we've explored in all of these Launch Your Career episodes. Is your ability to communicate with team members, to be clear on what you need and what value you're providing. And I think as a data scientist, that's super important. And all I can just add to that is, there's got to be some element of practice in this, right? You can practice the techniques. You can utilize ChatGPT to learn where it helps you and where it perhaps doesn't. Code completion AI assistants are getting even better, but you ultimately own your code and things like that. But it's the communication skills of, like, now that I have this insight, how do I share it in such a way that it's going to prompt action and behavior? I think that, in my opinion, as a hiring manager, and have worked with many people across Microsoft, like, that can be the difference maker, is the ability to communicate and share your thoughts, and do so in a collaborative way that leads others to build on your work and such as well. All right, another question that we have is, if somebody wanted to pursue a career in data science, there's thousands of courses out there. There's thousands of places of learning. This person comes from a software development background. What do y'all recommend for skilling up and becoming tomorrow's data scientist?
I think that's a really good question. I was coming from more like academic background. I was doing math for my undergrad, and then acquired that data science and statistics skills during my undergrad degree. But I would say, if a person is already mastered software development, if they're very experienced in that, I think there are a lot of transferable skills which they can really use as a data scientist as well, because it's again, like, you have a business problem and you're trying to solve it with software tools. I would say, I would personally recommend to choose courses where you have to do many projects, where you have to actually, like, go and get your hands dirty with data, when you can predict or build some projects with the field or data that you are really interested in, and kind of see that yourself. And I think that could really help to start building your skills in data science.
Yeah, I think it's like if you want to be a better musician, you practice piano or practice your instrument. You want to get stronger, you lift weights. If you want to be a better data scientist, you get practice analyzing data and communicating results. And so the analyzing data part, whether it's Kaggle, there are a lot of online free Kaggle courses I know, like just more like tutorials, where they can teach you pandas and teach you, there's some guided walkthroughs, so to speak, where it's like, hey, you import this data, this is how you select the first 5 rows of your data set. Here's the function to merge different data sets. So I'm a big fan of Kaggle, but I think, you almost just don't want to let perfect be the enemy of the good and just pick something. I think, kind of as mentioned earlier, I think it is helpful to have some guidance on kind of what topics to cover. If the way I think of it is, one, intro to pandas. Pandas is just so important. Pandas is we talk about that. We're not talking about an animal. We're talking about the Python package the most popular Python package to analyze and handle data sets. So you can merge 2 different data sets using that, right? So a tutorial on pandas will be very important. Understanding the basics of coding, like for loops, while loops, variables, that's important. Data visualization will get you far. So something on data visualization. And I believe Kaggle has these kind of intro tutorials on all of these. And of course, you can look up a bunch of different variations in data visualization, matplotlib versus Seaborn versus Plotly. Like there's so many, and don't get caught up in the differences. Just understanding the concepts of visualizing data in Python, and then machine learning. So understanding scikit-learn, understanding both how to do it in Python, but also the concepts behind it, behind machine learning. And they're honestly, just start with YouTube videos, start with Kaggle. It doesn't really matter as long as you just start learning, because we all know the internet's a vast place, and just starting something today versus waiting on the perfect course will get you far.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I will add to that. Microsoft has some free YouTube videos, Python for beginners, as well as other resources that's in the spirit of that as well. On Microsoft Learn, which is also free, we've got lots of introduction to Python and other libraries and things like that. You can check those out again at Launch Your Career Skills here. The alias, or sorry, the URL that you have in the visual here and such. But yeah, I think I'll just add that there's just so many resources out there. So I think practicing, building a resume and things like that, and that kind of gets to a question that Mark G has here that I'll show as well, as how important is it to have code and projects posted on GitHub for the hiring process? I don't know, what do you think about that?
I would say it is important to have previous experience of coding in projects. I'm not sure if every recruiter would check a GitHub, but what's important is that during the interview you will be asked about your projects, about your previous experience, and I think the most important thing is that you need to show that you actually have an experience in building projects. You understood why did you build that project, why you got interested in that specific models, and which problem we were trying to solve. And I think even if you don't have them on GitHub, but you are explaining them clearly during your interview, I think that's what hiring managers and interviewers are looking for.
Yeah, I think just being able to tell stories to your hiring manager, and that if those stories include code on your GitHub, I think more power to you. But being able to communicate and articulate those, I think, are super important. I'll go to a different question here, maybe Nate, for you on it. So JJ is asking, do hiring managers prefer to communicate via a dashboard such as PowerPoint or Tableau or Power BI? So it's getting a little bit to that sort of visualization theme that you were talking about earlier.
Right. So I'm only speaking from my experience. So not in my experience. However, the idea of differentiation, like being able to distinguish yourself among your the other applicants for the same position, is really important. And so I would encourage anyone to do anything to anything within the realm of data science to help you stand out. Showing, so it's all about communication. So of course it's great to be able to show physically, like here's a link to a dashboard, like what I've done, but also being able to communicate like why, I would say, would be a big focus, and why and how if asked. So once again, hiring managers are going to look for, when they're hiring for what I call business data scientists, to make sure that those future data scientists for that position can answer business problems, and can communicate them. So there's a clear theme, and we're repeating ourselves, but that's how important it is. And so that's, I think, the main focus. So I would say understand kind of, so if they're just asking you to do a take home, project, for example, like, hey, analyze this, when I was applying for, back in the day, a few years ago, when I was applying for, at an airline, as a data scientist at an airline, I analyzed their flight data, and I built this dashboard, right? So it really depends on what the person is looking for and what they're asking, but just make sure to speak their language.
Yeah. And I think I agree. And like, build things or explore things with something that you love. Like for me, there was a magic moment around forestry data and plotting the change in deforestation in the Amazon rainforest over time. And that time elapsed imagery and then the data set that I explored was really transformative. And it became kind of a project that I worked with and derived a lot of passion. So if you're in front of a hiring manager and you talk about something like that, if you're passionate about it, that communication, that energy is going to come forth, I think, in that. All right, well, let's end on one more question. Einar asks, could you please share some job search tips, especially if you don't have any experience, just projects? So this is a person I think is looking to land their very first data science role. What advice would you give them?
That's a good question. I think I was in college. When I was in college, I didn't have an experience. I started with some research projects, which I was doing in my courses, and which I was working as a research assistant in our math department as well. And while it wasn't like a corporate business applicable projects, but they still taught me like necessary skills. Python. They gave me an understanding like how to analyze data. And then during my first interviews, when I was just trying to get like some internship to understand how data scientists work in a corporate world, I think that kind of projects under my belt, they helped me to showcase that I have hard skills, and then and being able to communicate that project also helped. And I think for the job search tips is just like applying everywhere when you're a student. Don't be picky about like, oh, I only want to work like for big tech companies, or I only work I don't want to work like for small startups or small like non-technical companies. I think apply everywhere, and then like once you get into it, and you will start to understand which additional skills you need to develop, and you'll be getting like a better vision, and that will help you to progress, and then like maybe getting like better internships or like a full-time job that you actually wanted from the beginning.
And I would say leverage your network, because ultimately, people, I mean, we've all heard like, it's not like, it's who you know, right? So when I started off in management consulting, data science consulting, at a large consulting firm, and I really got that job out of university because an alum from my master's degree program, or my business school where I was doing my master's in analytics, an alum from there was at a consulting firm and wanted new data scientists, and recruited a few of us. So, that really fell into my lap, that kind of network. But of course, so if you're at a university, definitely leverage that. And if not, we love LinkedIn here at Microsoft. So definitely don't be afraid to reach out to people, kind of talk about your background. And yeah, it's really a numbers game. So don't be afraid to message people. And of course, if you have project experience and can really speak the data science language, that'll go a long way.
Very cool. All right. Well, to wrap up here, any parting advice, any last areas of wisdom that you would have for somebody who's exploring a career in data science or looking to become one soon?
Just have fun with it. This is a really exciting field. Generally, for a lot of us, like you can find something that you're interested in. If you're really into sports, I'm very into sports. Analyzing sports data can be a really fun way to really get into the field. If you're interested in finance, right? Like stock price prediction is a really common project, right? The data is everywhere, and being able to find the intersection between your interests and data will get you really far.
Yeah, I agree with Nate, and I would also add like to try different type of project, different type of I would say branches, like trying to analyze data, build machine learning models, maybe deep learning models are more fascinating for some people, or like even doing like data engineering. So like trying different things will lead you to understand like which part of data science you are really passionate and interested.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you both of you, Alena, Nate, for being guests today on Launch Your Career. Great conversation. I learned a lot, and it's great to kind of get your insights on kind of where data science is headed and things like that. So for all of you out there, we're going to have another episode where Alena, Nate, and I were going to be available just on the chat window. So we'll be able to dedicate more time to answering chats. That's going to be our episode here later in the day. We're going to air this as a pre-record. So if you want more information there, you're more than welcome to show up for that. But otherwise, thank you for being our attendees and learners today. Again, thank you very much, Nate and Alena, and y'all have a great day. Thank you.